Hello, everybody. Welcome to Slogans Rock and Metal Extravaganza, episode 3 of our Triumph series, ranking all the Triumph, well, not ranking them, discussing all the Triumph albums and going through the songs, and yeah. So today we have a very special guest, Pete Jones. So, Pete, you want to kick it off? Just a Game. Discuss the album that we're talking about. And then, yeah, so if you want to kick it off and...
Yep. Absolutely. I'll just thank you for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure. Brian was doing such a great job. He could have just done the whole series. He was doing a great job. So I'll just give you a real quick background about how I got into them and how I started and a little bit about the album before we kind of dig into album tracks, if that's okay.
Fine.
I got into them in real time in the U.S. As you mentioned in your previous show, that it wasn't until 78 until our version of Rock and Roll Machine came out here in the States. The album cover was impossible to pass up. If the fake fire, the big drum kit, and the double neck and everything, you're like, this can't be too bad, I guess. So let's grab it. And it was tremendous. So that's how we started. And when we got to Just a Game, the record store that was our regular weekend journey to go discover and buy stuff was starting to do some display promos, and they had a VCR machine. Of course, back then they were 8,000 pounds and you needed a truck to transport them around, but they were playing a couple promo videos. And I've always linked these two albums together because Just a Game came out in March 30th of 79 and Van Halen 2 came out 1 week earlier.
Wow.
And this video was a collection of videos, and it had the promos for Lay It on the Line, Hold On, and Dance the Night Away by Van Halen. Well, we started watching those and we were like, oh, so when the Van Halen came out, we got it the day it came out. And then when Just a Game came out, we got it the day it came out. They watched it so often, they burned the tape up. You couldn't even watch it anymore. It was just jittery, and it was just a complete mess. But I got it the day it was released. 48 on the U.S. charts, and it was gold here in the U.S. Some parts recorded at Sound Interchange in Toronto, some at Metalworks Studio in Ontario. And I think it's important to talk just for a second about Metalworks, because it's a studio that was established by Gil Moore, the drummer.
Yeah.
And in 78, and it's extremely active to this day. It has 6 full studios that can do between audio, video editing, all kinds of high-tech stuff. And between 98 and 2015, it won 17 Studio of the Year awards. So this is a legitimate, full functioning studio that Gil is a part of. So I think that's really great.
Yeah.
And the Triumph was also nominated for a Juno Award as Group of the Year in 79. So, the album was fun. It was a gatefold. It was their only gatefold, which featured some great concert shots and a board game.
Yep.
On it that was designed by bassist Mike Levin, and I think it was designed, if I read it right, that you can't win.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
I read that too. Yep.
Yeah, I think there's no way to win, so you could. Yeah, there you go. So you probably just keep going in circles and who knows what, but you can't win on it. The album's got 8 tracks, 4 on each side, coming in at just under 36 and a half minutes. There are no collaborative compositions on here, which is interesting to point out. Rick has 5 tracks, including the instrumental, and Gil has 3. And several of the tracks were written years before the session. Lay It on the Line and Hold On were both tracks that were existing before they went in. And coming off their second Canadian and, of course, the first U.S., this is a little bit more polished. It's a slightly stronger album sonically. The sound that we associate with Triumph is starting to form, and we're getting a sense of where they're going, and they're not there yet, but they're making some progress. I think Gil drums are much more prominent here. They're punchier. He's on record saying he didn't like the drum sound on this record, but most of us drummers aren't ever happy with our sound. When we hear it back on tape and we're like, no, that's not quite it. He was famous for using a huge Tama Imperial Star drum kit, and you want to pop me big here for a second.
Okay. Yep. Make you big.
That's the beast right there.
Nice. Yeah.
That is a huge kit. And thank you. And one of the things you notice is that his entire kit is concert toms, which means his drums do not have bottom resonant heads. And won't get in the weeds too much about that, but what that means is the drums have a very quick, very attack focused and throaty kind of sound, especially when you jam those mics right up into the shelves like he does. And you get a lot of impact, a lot of power. It's a shorter decay, so there's not as much overring, and it's a good way to get obviously Phil Collins has made a career doing it. It's a really great sound, but that's Gil's sound, is that big open sound. And what is funny is that at the time, the three biggest kits out on tour were Neil Peart's with Rush, Gil's kit, and Joe X. Doobie from Stars. And another big monstrous double bass kit. So, and I was talking to Logan earlier. Down in the link is down in the description is a link where I submitted a question to Gil Moore about his drum sound, and he actually selected it and says hi, Peter, and answers my question, and everything. It was kind of fun. Gil is also the first guy, one of the first drummers to endorse this new Canadian cymbal company called Sabian. And Sabian was an offshoot of the famous Zildjian cymbal company up in Meductic, New Brunswick. And, Gil being the Canadian and was one of their first endorsees. And of course, now you'll see that, Sabian is one of the three biggest cymbal companies on the planet. So, they knew what they were doing. He's not a flashy player. He plays for the song. There's not a lot of fills. They're kind of what I call connectors to move you from a verse to a chorus, from a chorus to a bridge, from a chorus to a solo section. He just plays what needs to be played. He certainly isn't overtly fill heavy or anything like that. And I like that. And it's good because it gives a lot of space for the music to breathe. It's also easier to do when you sing. So if you're not playing too much on the drum kit, it's a little easier to sing. So there's that. Real quick with Rick, Rick had some famous instruments that he had during that period. If you want to blow me up again here real quick. One of his most recognized is his Framus. That's the Framus Ackerman. And the Sunburst over there, and then Mike's white Fender Jazz bass, which he played pretty consistently. What's neat to look at is that looks more like a Les Paul, but it has one F hole right there, and it's a resonant hole. And it's interesting because his had one. This is Alex Lifeson's 335, and a typical 335 or 355 in this case had two F holes. And so he had kind of a combination. Plus, he was also famous for his Ibanez Artist double neck, which he used prominently on this record. And on the cover of the Rock and Roll Machine that I have, he has his white Gibson double neck. So, that's where we are. And so let's, if you want, we'll jump into the tracks here.
Yep. Okay.
Here we do. We start with Moving On. And what do we have right off the bat? Fake crowd.
Yeah.
A little less than enthusiastic cheering that kind of builds into a quarter note cowbell and hi-hat pattern. And I have to say this because what was also tied to that Van Halen is that this track was playing the cowbell, and Dance the Night Away starts with cowbell and hi-hat. So they're another thing that connects them. just driving big bass quarter notes with the bass, slide over the top. And we have a great vocal from Gil. And it really is a kind of a simple, it's not a lot of guitar work. It's just kind of simple strumming chords, and it's all about the melody. And they just have this underlying rhythmic motif. This is just like boom, 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 boom. And that's what kind of pushes it along the way. We get to the next part, it just adds some simple power chords. And then it's all about the chorus with big harmonies between him and Rick. Of course, they've multi-tracked some of that stuff, but they were always good together live.
Oh, yeah.
And they do get to a small little halftime section right before they reiterate the intro, right back to another verse, go back. And then they get to a really great solo section that they stay in halftime for. And then it's got a really nice riff underneath it. And then they get to the on and on and on section, which is really rich and very full. There's not a lot of flash in here. It's a straightforward rock song.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. Rick really stands out here. His soloing on this whole entire album is really great. But it's just melodic, straightforward. Gil's voice is really, really great. And one of the things that I talk about with Gil is that there is an impression when you compare it to Rick, because Rick can be that real stratospheric singer. He's got an amazing upper extension and can sing extremely high. So the thought is that because Gil's voice is a little thicker and timbre, a little richer, that his must be a lot lower. It's not really.
No.
Try and sing some of the stuff that we're going to talk about here. His voice is way up there. And
voice. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that he's doing it full chest voice. He's not using any falsetto or anything like that.
No.
His voice is just naturally very high. And it's a beautiful blend between him and Rick. And I think that's one of the staples of the Triumph sound. And I think that really is played out way more so moving forward. We get to Lay It on the Line. Of course, it's one of their most prominent and most popular tracks. Beautiful guitar intro on the double neck. So he needs the 12 string on this. And it's nice because they're double tracking it. One of them is playing in the 10th position, same chords, and then down in the 5th position. So you get a little higher timbre, a little lower timbre, and between the two of them, you kind of get this nice spread sonically all across with a very gentle lead line over the top, and Rick's voice more in his speaking voice range, which is really, really great. Of course, Lay It on the Line, big drum fill, pop, boom, and then in they go, right? And these power chords that Rick is doing, I think it's important to point out, a chord typically would be 3 notes. And if you were talking a root, a third, and a fifth, the third is what tells you whether it's major or minor. So if it's a major third, it's a major chord. If it's a minor third, it's a minor. Well, Rick is leaving the third out. So he's only playing roots in the fifths. So he can sing either major or minor against every one of those chords and not conflict, which is kind of neat because he can then, alter the notes that he's using and not have to go, oh, wait a minute, my chord is minor, I can't sing major, because you'd get that half step rub, and that's dissonance that we don't like. I love Mike's bass playing on the intro. It has always reminded me of what Deacon did at the beginning of Bohemian, because it is so simple, solid notes, sustaining notes, just hitting in the right spots, changing the chords for him. And it really adds a nice low end and a nice foundation. I think Mike is one of the people who really benefits from more experience in the studio and everything, because I think his bass sounds very rich and very full here. We get to the big chorus, the sing along, right? Lay it on the line, right? And they do it once. The second time they do a syncopation. What is syncopation? It's an accent off the beat. Lay it on the line. Da, 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 da. That is a syncopation. And so then they get what Rick has called the Queen layering, you know, don't waste my time. Some great lead work. Another cool verse. Really, really great solo from Rick here. It's so melodic, and you really get the sense that he's just got unlimited facility to be able to play anything he wants, but he focuses, even though he can be very flashy, it's something you can hum and something you can sing. And that is another real strong trademark of Triumph. We get this building triplets, and then they get Now I Love You, Now I Love You. Huge, thick backing vocals here. And get to the last chorus. This one changes it up. They do the syncopation the first time, not waiting till the second, which is a common rhythmic thing. You do it one way, you do it the second time the same way, third way you do it different. And then they do that syncopation the rest of the track. This track has become kind of a template for them. A softer introduction, a gentle vocal, drum fill come in more powerful, or, and you can look at Fight the Good Fight. You can look at Magic Power, Follow Your Heart. Follow Your Heart starts a little heavier, but this is something that they do moving forward. So it's not a surprise. Let me just put it this way as to why this one has become, as popular as it has and is endured over their entire career. We get to Young Enough to Cry, and this is a huge right turn, because now what do we have? We've got a 12/8 blues song, and you get that dun, da, 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 that very Zeppelin-like, and it's very traditional blues. And again, you get to the start of the first verse, it's really just bass and drums with Gil's voice and tiny little color spurts that Rick throws in here and there. And it starts to build and it just goes up and then back down and up and back down. Gil's voice sounds amazing on this. And I love how heavy it is. Yeah. And what I like about this one is that they choose not to double track his guitar. So when they play as a full trio, it is literally just the three of them. No extra guitar tracks, no extra backing rhythm tracks. It's them. And that is reminiscent of, Cream and going back to that kind of thing, which really resonates with me. And it makes the solos and everything sound so much stronger because there's so much air. And I've said on a lot of shows that space is something that is just, you cannot overstate how great having room to breathe is. And as they say, sometimes it's not what you play, it's what you don't play that is most important. We just a crushing guitar solo on here. And I love when they get to this bridge, no matter how hard I try, I can't shake it, babe. Oh, and then when he starts singing, my mind is, he's singing in an octave higher than I'm talking. So, it's really, really, really great stuff. And then it just instantly breaks right back down. And use of dynamics, very effective here. It's not just bludgeon you all the way through, and it's just not loud from start to finish. Simple, straightforward, traditional in its format. Unfortunately, this is a song that was pretty quickly abandoned. Yeah. This wasn't something that would show up.
No. I don't know if they ever played it live.
I don't know if they
Maybe
did.
on the tour, but that's it.
Yeah, and you're gonna be like, well, but maybe it. So far we've got three very different kind of compositions here.
Yeah.
Moving On is straightforward. Lay It on the Line is maybe the more epic kind of thing, and we had a complete blues tune. And then we end side one with another completely different. This is the hard, heavy rocker of the album. This is, the full distortion, start to finish. And what's cool too is that when you look at it, and I'm nerding out a bit here today, we've got stuff that's in D, key of D, we've got stuff that's in A, and finally we get to the heaviest track and it's in E, which of course is guitar player heaven. You get all the open strings, you get the low E, you get to do all the fun stuff with it. So that's not unusual if the heaviest track would allow him to, play over E changes. It's really kind of spacey like intro, and you hear the band. Love it. It was always good live. And here's where Gil's voice is deceiving, because it's way higher than you think it is. And it's a lot of chunking, a lot of heavy riff. The choruses are very catchy. Kind of sing-alongy. The lyrics, it's 1979, it's okay. I know how to treat a lady who knows how to treat her man. Wow.
Wonder what he means. Yeah.
Wow. Wasn't that tattooed on Marty McFly's shoulder or something? I don't know. But we get there and we get to this second part of the verse. Gentlemen, please rise and salute American girls. And we get a little bit of the national anthem. Everybody salute. And then we get this unbelievably aggressive and beautiful guitar solo from Rick, where he's and they got nice tight syncopations halfway through, and then it switches over to slide. So it's kind of like he's playing as two guitar players. There's one style here, he plays 4 bars, he plays slide here, he goes back, and then they go up to the bigger part of it, and then back to the choruses. And what the beauty of this track to me is that as we're getting towards the end, they do, the chorus 4 times, and with Rick leading over the top. And then now he's got these high colored American girls up over the top. And then they all do a big quarter note trill with dun, 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 and we start the outro section, which I think is by far the hottest part of this track. Rick is just killing it, and he's just flailing away. And at this point, Gil starts to stretch out a little bit, plays a little more fills, and I'm like, you just got to keep turning that up as that starts to fade out, because that's really cool stuff. And that's an interesting side. We've got Rick for 2, Gil for 2. We've got the heaviest. We've got one of their epics. We've got a blues track and a kind of a more accessible track. Side 2 is very different for me. First of all the compositions on side 2 are Rick's. There's nothing from Gil here. And you get Just a Game, which all fades in as a full band performance. And it's kind of spacey. It's a little ethereal. To me, this sounds more than any of the other tracks something that could have come from their first 2 records. I'm not saying it doesn't fit with what's on the rest of this album, but it's got that throwback feel. To me, it is more, and from what I was used to, from what we got Rock and Roll Machine, it seemed it would fit more in there. Rick's voice is great bass lines, but simple instrumentation again, and they just keep recapitulating that intro riff. They do it between verses, they do it between choruses, they use it behind the solo section. So if you don't like that little motif, you're not going to like the song, because they just keep replaying it over and over again. I think it's a track that really kind of doesn't go anywhere. It's got a little breakdown section. What do you choose now? What do you believe now? Who are you gonna trust? And it's a good part, but where does it go to? And then we get a big drum fill back to na na na, just like the intro over again, and he solos over it. And it's a great solo. They pull it way back, they build it back up, super again, and then a bigger drum fill. And they go through that. It's a good track. I don't skip it by any stretch, but it just kind of felt like it was, if you're listening to it as a continuous, it kind of puts a little of the stopper on it for me from the momentum that they were building up from the first side. But it's a very quick fade out. They get to the point and it's just like, okay, we're done. And there's some great vocals from Rick that you wish had been part of the main vocal, because he's starting to up his range there and everything. We go into Fantasy Serenade. It's what it is. A very well done, very tasty, almost medieval, kind of Renaissance, a pseudo classical, clearly it shows his beautiful technique. And this is something that he would revisit on a lot of other records. Small, you can call them connectors, you can call it intro or whatever, but it's really not an intro because it doesn't really have anything to do with the next song. They're just small little interludes, I guess is the best word to use for them. It's entertaining, it's well done, and it sounds great. And it's not too long where you're like, okay, can we get to the next track? So here we go. We got Hold On, right? And this was one of the tracks that was written earlier, and it was totally reworked for this. It was originally more folkish and done acoustically, and it's easy to see why. Because the parts where they've added heavier instrumentation, when it breaks down, you can hear that it's really about a singer-songwriter. It's about Rick, his guitar, and a vocal and a melody that he has. It's a very interestingly constructed song. There's really not a chorus per se. They do hold on, hold on, hold on, but they don't do that until further on. It did pretty short. I like the layered vocals, some good drum fills in here. When they get down to the bottom, they get this bam, 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 dum, da, and then they go to halftime. And then we get, for the very first time, these roundhouse drum fills from Gil, where he's trying to show you how many toms he has, right? And so they go through all that, and it builds up, and they double on, double time, and he plays on all the quarter notes, and then totally breaks down, right? We've just got, and then we get this, very almost New York groove, right? You can use that, or it's very chic or Niles Rodgers-ish if you want to go into that camp. And dare I say it, is it almost slightly pseudo disco-ish? Which, of course, is interesting because in their live shows, they did a big anti-disco rant in 79 and 80 and everything. And they were, so I think they'd be very upset if I used the D word right here. But my ears tell me it's a little...
Yeah, that's what you mean.
Yeah, and they get that... It's just... And then, hey! Power chords come in and they come back and they do the verse, and he's got these beautiful guitar runs. So it's a great song. It's very different than everything that's come before it. So we're seeing a pattern here that there is no pattern, because we haven't had two songs repeat themselves stylistically, at least in my opinion. And when we get to the final track, that even bears that out even further. So what do we have now? We've got a full-on nightclub bar lounge band. Right? It's 4 a.m. There's not a soul around. You're like, okay, it's beautifully played. His guitar comping underneath is great. Mike's bass work is beautiful, and it's a nightclub bluesy lounge song, and you're like, okay. It's well performed, it's well executed, it's well written, and you just kind of go, Why is it there? Right? And so what do we have here? We've got an album that is kind of all over the place. Some things really work great. Some things may not work as well. And this is how I've always viewed this, because I think that Just a Game is an essential transitional album. It's not as heavy as certainly as Rock and Roll Machine is, not by any stretch. Even American Girls isn't as heavy as Street Fighter or Rock and Roll Machine or anything like that. And the other ones are a little more accessible commercially, hence their popularity. But I don't think it was until we get to Progressions, and even half of Progressions, I'm not going to mess your show up for next week, has elements, and then it seems to all kind of coalesce. And he's like, here is final, fully formed, fully mature Triumph. I listened to the album a lot. I love it, mostly because I really enjoy the vocals from both Gil and Rick. Rick's guitar playing is great. This is my 5th highest ranked in their catalog.
Okay.
I give this an 8 out of 10. Just disclosure, Rock and Roll Machine, at least the US version I'm familiar with, is a 10 for me. It's just the history of it, the introduction of the band, the formation, what I would say is the most in my DNA, and because that's the blanket part. There's a lot of great stuff after it, but it's an essential record, and I think the band has even said, we were kind of all over the place here, and it's not really what we really wanted to present. Gil wasn't happy with how much material was Rick's, and especially the entire second side is all Rick. And foreshadowing, take a look at Progressions and look at the writing credits, folks. It flips. Gil is much more prominent now on moving forward, and did that cause friction and tension? To be determined. But writing credits are how you get the extra bill. So we'll see. Great album, but it's a must-own for any Triumph fan, I think. So there you have it.
All right, perfect. Music lesson from Peter Jones there. So let's go to some of the comments. A lot of people saying hello. Let's see what we got here. Jeff Dennis saw them live for the first time on this tour at Hamilton Place, first concert hall now. One of the best concerts I've ever been to. Jealous of that.
Yeah, I never got to see him, unfortunately. Wow. And that's a big regret for me.
Yeah.
There's some really great recordings from this era. Being from Chicago, we had a radio broadcast from the Aragon Brawl Room, or Ballroom, we would call it, for this tour. Very heavy. They've picked all the tracks from the earlier records that are much heavier. It was also interesting to point out that, in 78, they headlined Canada Jam.
Yeah.
And, if you think about that from the US standpoint, you're like, that's pretty big stuff. So they were way ahead up north than they were down where we were. We had no idea, look, they headlined over Doobie Brothers and some other bands, but I guess the event was running really, really late, and they went on at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and when they finished their set or something,
Wow.
So, but yeah, there's some great live stuff out there. And like I said, before they do Rock and Roll Machine, Gil does his best Ted Nugent. He's like, disco music is making me sick to my stomach. He goes, and if anybody you here want to hear it, he just goes, get your ass out the back door. And you're like, okay, thanks, Ted Jr. And then they kill into Rock and Roll Machine. And what's interesting is that, especially live during that era, they really stretched out a lot. There's a lot of solos and a lot of songs that are 5, 6, 7 minutes long, where Rick just goes off and then Gil does the thing with the crowd, and they go on and on and on. And, the other thing too, we have to point out is that this is where the stage show really starts to come into its own. And, like I was showing on the picture with Gil's kit, you can see the documentary and all that kind of stuff. The band was very prominent in creating and helping design a lot of their own pyrotechnics and a lot of their own stage show and everything. And they always had all the videos I've seen and all of the photos from concerts, one of the great, stage shows, especially from a lighting and a pyro standpoint. And it's just 3 of them. It's easy to do. Big, huge drum kit. How can you go wrong? So,
yeah.
Let's see. My mom wouldn't let me go to Canada Jam. I so wanted to. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, that would have been a great show. My God.
That's a crazy lineup, though. I was looking into that. Doobie Brothers, Triumph.
Yeah, got it right here. It was Ozark Mountain Daredevils. That was Jackie Blue. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Weird one.
Yep.
Doobie Brothers, Atlanta Rhythm Section.
Yep.
So Into You, Champagne Jam.
Yep.
Great band. The Village People.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll like that one.
Classic Dave Mason of Traffic.
Yeah.
Waku. No idea who that is. Prism. Do you know who Prism is?
Yes.
I've heard of Prism, yeah.
Kansas.
Yeah.
And the Commodores. And Triumph ended their last encore at 3:35 a.m.
Jeez.
Crazy.
That's a long day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like that Triumph's albums are varied as opposed to listening to AC/DC, which had, I like AC/DC, but it's right. True. You're not going to have AC/DC doing like long prog or, you're not going to get that with AC/DC.
Well,
Triumph,
and this
have variety.
And this, if I can conjecture here for a second, this starts to raise an issue. The inability for the masses to uniformly label a band as X can be a problem. I don't like labels. Triumph is Triumph.
Right.
But they're saying, are they a metal band? You would never call Triumph a heavy metal band. No. Are they a hard rock band? Yes, they can be. Absolutely. But they are much more melodic than a lot of their counterparts.
Yeah.
Very vocally driven. They're also one of the few handfuls of bands whose each studio record got progressively better, both from a songwriting and a production standpoint. They just kept sounding better and better. That's not always the case with a lot of bands. And because you don't know how to pigeonhole them, and I don't like pigeonholing, and that's the problem. So you're like, well, what is Triumph? How would you describe Triumph at this point?
Yeah.
It'd be hard to.
Yeah, there's people that refer, they're a pop rock band.
When you do so many different styles, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah.
Do you think
you're not going to find too many? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you guys think it helped them or hurt them in the long run that they did so many different?
Probably hurt them because people aren't as into. People's minds aren't wired to like multiple things. Sadly,
correct. Most
people are like, "Oh, this doesn't sound like this, so I'm not listening to this."
Right.
But if the music's good, the music's good.
Yeah, and the variety that we had on here, from Suitcase Blues to American Girls, is as wide as you will ever find on any band's album. It doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
But they work because I enjoy all the attributes that make Triumph in whatever stylistic approach they decide to use.
Right.
So if other than, magic power and, follow your heart and all these other ones, fight the good fight that you would say are more accessible hits, almost everything you would say otherwise is kind of a deep cut. It's
Yep.
because you can go all over the place. That's totally true with progressions. It's true with allied.
Yeah.
It's true moving forward. So, and when somebody likes something, a lot of times they're not very flexible if the rest of it's not the same way.
Yeah.
So I do think that it can hurt them, but to their credit, and obviously they can look back with hindsight and say, oh, I wish I'd have done that. I wish I'd done that. But I have a lot of respect for bands that play and write and perform for themselves first. If the rest of us happen to attach and enjoy it, now, I mean, they have to make a career at it. So they need people to like it at some level. But at the end of the day, a musician has to be true to themselves. When they start writing for outside people, Aerosmith, I lose respect for them because now they're just chasing the dollar. I don't begrudge them for chasing the dollar, but I don't have to like what they're doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, you mentioned that. I was just watching an interview with Rick today, and he was mentioning how he was offered to replace Brad Delp in Boston. This was right after leaving Triumph. Yep. Brad Delp in Boston. He was offered to be a third guitar player in Damn Yankees, and he basically told Jack Blades from Night Ranger, well, 3 guitar players is, I think, a little bit too much, don't you think? And I'm kind of fine just doing my own thing.
Right.
And then who was the other one? I was mentioning this to Logan before we went live. Asia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So this would have been around 88, 89, maybe 87, shortly after he had left in that time period.
And I don't like to compare, but just as a, an AB, Rick is his side of the aisle's Tommy Shaw.
Yeah.
The writer, the singer, the great guitar player, very high voice, just do it all. And Rick really can do all of it. But clearly, he's got the kind of personality that's not what he was interested in. He's not going to jump and hop. And, when he was done with Triumph, he was.
Yeah. He mentioned make no mistakes. It was Gil's band and we had a falling out. So I didn't want to be going and playing in somebody else's band because I had been doing that my whole career.
Yeah. Because if I recall correctly, and I haven't watched the thing in a while, it was Gil and Mike who recruited Rick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those things matter, as to whose band it is.
Oh. You got me.
That's a good segue, huh?
Oh boy.
So there you go. Just a game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was great, Peter.
Oh yeah. He said the same thing. He's like, I could have done it. I probably would have made a lot more money, but money's not my main motivation for music. He said the same thing. If it doesn't come from the heart and soul, then I'm not doing it.
No, he's an artist's artist.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to Logan, he's going to lay it on the line and discuss this album.
Well, I wanted to bring up the sales figures a little bit.
Okay.
Well, it went platinum in Canada, and it was a gold certified album in the U.S.
Right.
So pretty cool. That's the best they had so far from the first 3. So that's good. So I'll get into the tracks, I guess. We got first track, Moving On, which I mentioned the sound of the crowd. This is the first thing we're greeted to, which I guess Peter is right. It's kind of like a little golf clap a little bit, It's not like they're ready to hear some rock and roll,
Yeah.
But I mentioned the cowbell work and the straight, 4/4 quarter note feel to it. Then a rock and roll style riff comes on. And I said, it's got some great slide guitar work, when we break into the verse. And Gil singing about life on the road and hard times, like he did on the last couple songs he sung. I think this is probably the best one of that. What's Another Day of Rock and Roll and Takes Time. I think this is probably the best one out of those. I said musically, this song keeps a pulsating beat throughout with a 4 on the floor rhythm section. Guitars layered throughout. I think it's a great chorus. Fantastic use of backing vocals. And I think they had guest people doing I don't know if it was women or it looked like it sounds like girls. I don't know though. But Rick shows his talent, but he crafts a short solo. And Peter kind of talked about this. He's good at making concise short solos, but stuff you can always remember, I think it's a great track to start the record off. Then we get to probably their most popular, one of their most popular songs, definitely up to this point, their most popular song, Lay It on the Line. It's got like some mysterious sounding chords at the start, and a keyboard work sees us into the next section of it, with Rick taking lead vocal, kind of singing and yearning about someone, but he's confident about it too, like in the chorus. Got cool fills from Gil, like Peter mentioned, when you're getting into the verse. It's got a hooky, catchy chorus. I said it'll get stuck in your head immediately after listening. It hasn't left my head since I first heard it. So
right. Yeah.
Well. Then I said the solo kind of has classical tingings to it a little bit. Rick plays some rapid, fast scale work into another verse with some backup vocals into the chorus again to ride the rest of the song out. I think it's a perfectly crafted rock song on just about every level. And I also mentioned it reached number 23 on the Billboard singles charts. So that's pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
Then we get Triumph's blues song, showing their foray into blues rock. And I said searing guitar work from Rick throughout, with Gil giving a very emotive and dramatic vocal on this track. And I love when the band starts to settle in this bluesy groove. And I said Rick sets his guitar on fire on this song. every note, I mean, it's killer. And I love the ending with Gil singing, and then the call and response with Rick's guitar parts. Killer. I think I said the song shows they can do great dynamic styles, as well as going from softer, laid back verses to like soaring chorus in the song, with Gil singing in that higher octave like Peter was talking about. And I just capped it off with Triumph proves again they can do yet another strong style, different style of music. And then we get American Girls, which, this is probably my favorite on the record. I love this song. Fantastic heavy riff rocker. The song grabs you right from the opening riff and doesn't let go. And I like in the verses, the ascending and descending chords as Gil's singing the song. It's pretty cool. I said what makes up the verse riff, the ascending and descending chords, with Gil singing of his love of those gals from the USA. And then they break into the solo of the song, which, first they get the national anthem part. Then we rock it off with some fantastic slide and lead guitar from Rick. Then another chorus follows and another solo, very reminiscent of, I think Rick kind of has some like 50s style leanings in the ending solo a little bit. I hear a little bit like Chuck Berry licks and stuff, which fits with that song,
Sure.
Yep. That was what I wrote about side 1. So we're going to side 2. And I kind of have the same feeling as Peter does about this. I like the track Just a Game. It fades in nicely. And you can tell it's going to be one of the dramatic, epic songs on the album, with that guitar line repeating throughout. I think Rick gives a pretty good vocal here. Kind of reminds me of the Minstrel's Lament section of The City, what he's singing about. Power, but it's kind of like more about life in general than the music business, which I think Minstrel's Lament was more about the music side of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got some great guitar playing from Rick in the middle section. And I said there's some nice acoustic undertones in the song as well. But yeah, I'd say I'm kind of, it's good, but I'm kind of somewhat so with it, I guess. Well, it's a good song. Then we get Fantasy Serenade, which is the first one of Rick's classical pieces that's just by itself on an album instead of being a part of a song or like Blinding Light Show or
Right.
shows off how underrated of a guitarist he is, I think, because nobody really talks about Rick Emmett at the end of the day,
Yeah, that's a horrible oversight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's got some nice accompaniment work from the keyboards as well, laying some nice chords down. But it doesn't outshine Rick here, obviously, because that's the spotlight. I think Peter brought up kind of Renaissance styling and classical bits. Yeah, it's a good minute and 40-second tune. Then we get Hold On, which is one of Triumph's biggest songs too. I read on online it said Rick Emmett's talked about creating the song by singing open vowels over a couple chord changes, which that's pretty cool. Then he found the words to hold on and he didn't know what to write it about. Like, what am I holding on for? I mean, hold on to your dreams, That's the good thing about Triumph, man. They always sing about self-confidence, believing in yourself. It really starts with this song because they didn't really do anything before that had that kind of feel. But definitely like Magic Power and, Fight the Good Fight.
Absolutely. Follow your heart.
I mean, positive messages, which not a lot of rock bands did. I mean, more back in the day than now, But what else did I say about this one? Starts almost right where Fantasy Serenade leaves off, kind of. Rick singing a passionate vocal about the power of music. So kind of a precursor to Magic Power a little bit. Said a very layered chorus leads into a rock section of the song, and then the chorus from before rocked up a little bit more. And I said the second section of the song gets even more dramatic with Rick's empowering vocals and Gil throwing some roto. Are those rototom fills in the middle when
no, those are just his smaller concert toms on his kit.
Smaller one?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I couldn't tell if they were rototoms or it has that higher pitch.
They are higher pitched. They're smaller size. He had 6, 8, 10, 12 up on his left side. A rototom is distinguished by its ability to rotate the shell to change the pitch. That's what made a rototom. And because it had no shell at all, it was a big smack. So rototoms have a very distinct sound. Perfect example is listen to the drums on Vandenberg's debut. Those are rototoms. Yep. They smack. Awesome. Terry Bozzio used them in Missing Persons, and Bill Bruford has used them a ton. But the rototom itself is a head in a spoke that you can rotate. And as you tension and loosen it, the pitch will go up and down. Hence roto. So.
Awesome.
Some love from Ernesto.
So I mentioned nice drum set. Well, we got to have a little gear talk here,
Yeah.
I mentioned that hi-hat groove, like Peter said, with the forbidden D word,
That's right.
ISCO.
I've already used up the allocation for this show. We can't use it anymore.
Yeah, and the guitars come soaring over the top of that, It's got, I read too, it's got over 24 tracks of guitars were used in the last section, which is pretty cool. Gives it kind of an epic feel at the end. And then we get the Suitcase Blues, which, I said jazzy scale work opens this tune up with Rick singing about the aftermath of a gig on the road. I think it's a nice kind of companion piece to moving on a little bit. It's kind of like the opposite end of it a little bit. But I definitely see it don't really fit on here, but like we were talking about, I mean, what does? Because they just do so many different stylings.
Let me ask you both this. If the song had been placed anywhere else on the record, would you be much more objectionable to it? If it had just
see,
in the middle of the album, all of a sudden you had Suitcase Blues.
Yeah. I don't think it would have worked like that.
Yeah. The fact that it's the last track is almost like, hey, it's last call. We've just played all this music for you.
Yep.
You know, and I think of it that way conceptually as an entire album, that it kind of works. You know, it's 4 a.m. There's not a soul around. You know, we just did what we do.
Yep.
The musicians are always the last ones to leave.
Yep.
You know, and if you're the drummer, you're always even the last of the last to leave because it takes us the longest to put our crap away. But I've been there a million times. Everybody else is already gone. Everything's faded away. It's just, you've got the Suitcase Blues. It's just one gig to the next. Everything blends together. There could be lamenting for home or, you know, or anything. And you're just like, I'd really rather be doing this, but here I am.
Yep. Great points, Peter. Yep.
I think it works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely think it fits where it's at in this album. It kind of, I wrote down too, it kind of reminds me of how News of the World ends with My Melancholy Blues.
Oh,
yes.
After It's Late.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I wrote kind of an out. Yeah. Thank you. Kind of an outlier on this album, but yep. But I do like it when playing all the album through in full. It's not like I'm going to listen to some Triumph. I'm going to listen to Suitcase Blues. But yeah, that's about all I said about the record. I said, this is one of the albums that got me into Triumph when I was first getting into them. So it holds a special place to me. So Lay It on the Line is one of my favorite Triumph songs. So, but it's them going for a more commercial sound, obviously, after the first two, with the more progressive leanings on those. But it also shows they're still not afraid of pushing their styles in the blues and even jazz territories.
Right.
While not as sophisticated or proggy as some of the first two albums highlights, this album shows a band in transition and ready for whatever comes next. So I gave it an 8.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Great. Excellent.
Sweet. All right. So let's see. So yeah, this album actually, oddly enough, it was a decline in sales in Canada because the original Canadian release of Rock and Roll Machine went double platinum, which was 200,000 copies in Canada. This only went platinum, which was 100, so it only sold half that Rock and Roll Machine, which is surprising because Rock and Roll Machine did nothing outside of Canada.
Right.
So it was just kind of weird. They grew in the States, but their popularity here declined.
Well, you have to grow in the States because it was zero to begin with.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if that hurt them because they had to be on the road. Like, they were always away from home then, right? Because they always had to be out of the country to do their shows because all their shows had to be in the States from then on. Like, they would still do shows in Canada, but they were doing hockey arenas after Rock and Roll Machine. But then after that, they took off, and yeah, it's.
Well, do you think and then obviously going back and getting, the two albums separate and hearing them in their original context.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll Machine at least seems a little more cohesive conceptually and compositionally.
Yeah.
From start to finish. Now, whether you like that material more or less is your own preference, but Just a Game is a departure from that. And it could be in an allegorious, what's the analogy word I'm trying to use here, is that you think of maybe Rock and Roll Machine is kind of maybe Fly By Night. And maybe Just a Game is kind of a Caress of Steel-ish.
Little, yeah.
And we get a little bit of a correction, and then, they move forward just like Rush did and some other bands do. But we know this hindsight. So we're saying this because we already know.
Can't change his, Back
when
then,
you're listening to it in real time,
yeah.
Way back in 1979, all you did is have the album in front of you and you told yourself, do I like it or do I not like it?
Yeah.
That's all you have. because I don't know what's next. I have no idea where they're going, and that's the to be continued.
Yeah.
It's the best part. So.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it starts with moving on. Yeah, pretty much just a straightforward rock song with that little clapping at the beginning. Yeah, short little solo, like you said. Rick can do like these long solos where he goes on and on, but he also do like these little short ones that are still so great.
Yeah,
And
he
just
does the short and concise thing
song.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a great song. Lay It on the Line, of course, is the most famous song of theirs by this point, at least internationally. And yeah, I don't listen to the radio, but like it's one of those songs that's always played on the radio. I remember being in the car with my parents growing up, and it was always on the radio.
Yeah.
It was either Lay It on the Line or Rocky Mountain Way, actually. It was the other one that they used to play all the time. But yeah, Lay It on the Line. And there's a part, the solo, there's the very end of the solo where it speeds up and gets really fast. If you were to go to listen to it back to back, you'll notice it is identical to Four Horsemen by Metallica.
No.
There's the really fast part where it really picks up and he's just going nuts. So I think Kirk Hammett probably was listening to that a little bit.
Rick said when he was playing it that he intentionally wanted to convert the feel so he'd be able to play triplets in to the Now I Love You part.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do that rhythmically, and that's it. It does. And he thought about it. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end, whether it's this long or it's this long. He figured out how to do it in whatever time frame he needed. And that's a great skill.
Oh yeah. Like it's almost a metal solo level. The fact that Metallica used it. If you listen to it, when I first heard the Four Horsemen, I'm listening to the end of it, and I'm just like, that's Lay It on the Line, the end of the solo. But yeah, so then you get into Young Enough to Cry. I think if this song was by I don't know, Clapton or one of the bigger blues names, it would have been a huge hit.
Yeah.
But because it was just this Canadian band that was just kind of starting to get popular internationally, no one knows the song for the most part. If you go ask people, name a Triumph song, they're not going to say Young Enough to Cry. And if they do, then they're just like, okay, they're just trying to impress you.
It's as BJ Thomas said, hey, won't you play another Somebody Done Me Wrong song?
But it's great. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure all three of them were all married and were settled down already at this point. So I think lyrically, they're probably just doing that to appeal, because that is what you write about when you're in a band sort of thing. Right. They're just trying to appeal to that sort of audience, which I don't care anyways. The music's good, but it's just kind of funny. They're writing all these kind of not breakup songs, but I guess they are. But yeah,
well, they're heartbreak songs.
They're heartbreak songs. Maybe it was a past girlfriend they were writing about. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah.
Which is a pretty huge right turn from Blinding Light Show.
Yes. Huge right turn. But it's a great song. The soloing is just...
Yeah.
And yeah, Gil's voice, he can sing that stuff. And it's funny because he's got a high-pitched voice, so you wouldn't think it would work on a blues song, but it somehow does. He's high-pitched but bluesy. It's a weird mix. He's got he's got such a solid voice.
Yeah,
Rick's a great singer, but Gil's no slouch either. No one talks about him as a great singer. And the fact that he's drumming and doing it, that's not easy to do.
No, it's not.
You try to do that, you almost try to sing along to the beat that you're playing, but you can't. You don't do that. You have to sing to the song. So
you just have to separate your brain.
Yeah, to do that is just a skill on its own. So he's just phenomenal as just a musician in general. So then move on to American Girls. Good, like you said, just straightforward, hard rock song, just pretty simple. But I do like how they do the little anthem thing right before the solo. It's kind of neat. And I think it does sound like there might be some maybe female background vocals going on. There's a lot of they did that on previous albums. New York City Streets had that. They had the female background vocals, but it worked. I don't know. Yeah, American Girls is probably my favorite on the album. I'd maybe Lay It on the Line, but American Girls is it's just a straightforward just heavy rock song with just great leads. It's every song of theirs. You can't say there's a single Triumph song with like a bad solo. Like just every single song. It can be like the most generic, simple song, then out of nowhere, there's this crazy solo, and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. Okay. It's just, yeah, it's just a phenomenal guitar player. And then Just a Game, I actually really like this song. It's, yeah, it gets that guitar part goes throughout and it doesn't really change, but I like the whole mood of it. It's just, I don't know, just the feel of it. It's just got a great sound. If that's like the weakest song, then it's a great weak song then, because I wouldn't call it the weakest, but yeah, like it's like just a great song. And even like the lyrics are kind of relevant today, sadly. It seems like it's about just politicians kind of, you know, it's a game and we're all in it and they're not really looking out for you. It's not really, I like it because they're not really taking a political side, not like saying left or right. It's just in general. So it's just kind of like, you know, that sort of thing. And then, yeah, this is where it sort of drops off for me. Like I said, I like variety, and variety is good. But like, I don't know, Fantasy Serenade, yeah, it's well played. Like, I can't say it's not, and it's him doing his classical thing. I probably would have preferred it in the middle of a song, like in a song context, not on its own. But yeah, you kind of look at it. It's a little bit of an intro to Hold On. Doesn't really go directly into it. But yeah, it's all right. It's good for what it is. Like the guitar playing is good on it, but it's not something that I'll sit there and listen to over and over again. I'm not going to sit there putting on Fantasy Serenade when I listen to Triumph. Right? It's there. It's not badly played, but it's there. And then Hold On, well constructed song and huge hit on, I'm assuming, Canadian and US radio.
Yep.
Still played here all the time. I was never crazy about it. It is well constructed. It's just not my, like, for me, Rock and Roll Machine is the untouchable album. So for me, it was a little bit when you went from that to Hold On. It's, I don't know. I know I was just saying how I like variety, but for me, it's not really my
too far, too quick
cup of tea. Yeah. It's not that it's a bad song. It's really well constructed and the playing is great. Like the thing, it's not a bad song at all. It's really well written and well constructed. And there is a part, I think it's like the very beginning. It sounds just like Tonight by April Wine. It's identical.
Yeah,
where that song turns into like just this much heavier rockish song. This starts off with that same, and it's I'm probably is note for note, and I believe they actually came out the same year. So I don't know if it's coincidence that we're sharing ideas with each other, because I'm sure both Canadian bands, I'm sure they probably did shows together. So yeah, there's that connection. So I noticed that it's the first time I Hold On, I'm like, oh, that's Tonight. And then the song turns into its own thing. And then yeah, it ends with Suitcase Blues, which is basically just like a lounge song, put your feet up and just kind of hanging out. Which is, yeah, again, it's like I said, it's well played, but you do kind of like scratch your head and you're like, on a Triumph album, it's a little bit odd. Like it's not that it's a bad song, it's just like that's something you would hear on Rick's solo albums, right? You wouldn't expect it.
Maybe, yeah.
On a Triumph. But he's gone on record on saying it's like one of his favorite songs. Because it's like, for him, he's the kind of person, I was watching an interview today and he was basically stating that guy on stage, like touring the world, doing arenas, that's not actually me. I'm more of just like, I'm the guy that just likes to hang out and just talk and be social. And so that's why Suitcase Blues is special to him, because it reminds him of just hanging around with friends, and that's the kind of song you'll hear in the background while you're just hanging out with friends. So it's kind of odd, but that's what he's into, and that's Rick Emmett being himself, basically. So I do give it I give him credit for that, for trying to just be himself on that. That might have caused a little bit of friction with maybe Gil, and I don't know if that caused any sort of, they probably thought, really, Rick, this is what you're going to put on the album, but it was Rick being himself. And yeah, I applaud him for it. I don't have to I don't have to enjoy. I'm sure there's people that love listening to that if you're into that sort of thing. But like, yeah, that's just Rick being basically true to himself, really. But yeah, I would give it, I mean, like I said, the last 3 are not, I can't give it like a 7 because that's just, because the other material is so strong, I'll go an 8. But yeah, like for me, Rock and Roll Machine is, at least it's not disco. Yeah. Yeah.
Can't say the word.
Solid. He said it 3 times. Oh, Gil's going to have this video taken down. Triumph and disco in the same sentence.
That's
Oh.
right.
But yeah, so yeah, it was so we got what, 8? Logan gave it
8.5.
0.5, and you gave it an 8.5, right?
Seen some guys in the chat gave it a 9. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. So then yeah, well so like we always do, we'll move on to little Triumph trivia. Whoever can answer this question right gets to pick the second album that we will discuss after next week's Progressions of Power discussion. So let's see what I come up with here. Let's see. Trying to think of a good question. I usually try to base them off of things that have been discussed by Logan or whoever's guesting on the show. Let's see. Okay. What song did Hold On by Triumph remind me of? The intro. The band or the song, either way, you can see what people can come up with.
No takers so far.
Logan's not allowed to guess. Let's see what we got. Gary's gonna get it. Gary or Webb?
Oh, Webb said he's waiting. He's knocking at the door, is what he said.
Oh, okay.
Bring him in.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm coming.
Yeah, he told me before. Well, he said it in the chat, but I didn't want to interrupt you. So
poor guy's been impatient while I've been blathering on forever.
Yes, it was April Wine.
Well, your mom's got to pick, buddy.
Yeah, that's my mom, by the way. So yeah, she's gonna pick it now. Oh, what's she gonna pick now? Please no Village People.
Village People live at Toronto Fest.
Oh, Razam and Az by Nazareth.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
I don't have to do much homework on that one.
Nice. Okay. I don't see Webb's thing. It doesn't show me.
Made you big.
Nope, that's not it.
Yeah, poor Webb is going to take out a hit on me for keeping talking here.
Yeah. Where is
Let me in. Let me in.
Doesn't show him on here at all. There's
Send him the
no
link again.
Doesn't say anybody's trying to get in. No. Put user in timeout. No, don't want to do that. Can you imagine? Oh boy. That's weird. Let's see what happens if is Webb in the right link? Oh, there we go. Now he's there. There we go.
All right.
All
There
right.
he is.
Perfect. Finally. Nice to finally put a face.
Oh, yeah. So glad to be here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Perfectly.
Okay, awesome. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me on, Logan, Sydney. Yep. I love listening to Pete. Pete, you didn't say too much. I can so I can listen. I mean, everything you say about the drums, I'm like, yes.
That's kind. Thank you.
Nice.
Well, so, yeah. Do we want to talk some Moxy? I mean, what do we want to
my back?
Yep. So we're going to do a Moxy 2. Peter, are you doing this one? Or are you?
You know, I will disclose this. I've listened to it a couple times. I will refrain from interjecting any real commentary to it, but okay. I would love to listen through it and hear Webb's comments and everybody's comments that I will take back to another listening when this is over.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I also, on the channel, I decided to create playlists of all the albums that we've discussed. So if you go on the home page, this album's already been posted, and it'll redirect you to Moxy's like official thing where they have the album on there to listen to. You can go track by track or whatever. Yeah, so you can actually listen to everything we've discussed, and I've even got like the Triumph discography there so far, and I put your thing there of Gil answering your question. That's there too, so you can watch all of that. So yeah, so do you want to start with? We'll start with the, yeah. There you go. Triumph answers Peter Jones. Would have been nice if it was in person, wouldn't it? That would have been cool.
He said, "Well, I'll tell you, Peter," and I said, "At least he got my name right." I mean, quick side note: I was telling Logan that Ian Pace answered one of my questions during COVID.
How do you get Peter wrong?
It just had my email.
Oh.
And so it's P Jones 8404.
Oh, okay. So you guessed the name.
Ian Pace says, "Well, I have a question from Pionis 8404." He goes, "What an odd name." And I'm like, Ian Pace just called me odd.
Oh, nice. That's funny. Yeah. You just sit there guessing. Is it Paul Jones?
It's Jones.
Hey, bro.
P. Jones.
Yeah.
He called me Pionis.
Oh, well, that's awfully close to something else, but yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah.
All righty. Fire it away.
Anyway, so over to Webb. Want to discuss how you got into Moxy or this album, and what made you decide to go with that for our discussion?
Okay, well, when I answered your trivia question last week, I don't know, I was thinking 70s rock, Canadian, and all of a sudden Moxy jumped in my head, and I'm like, I feel like that's a band that a lot of people don't know about, and I think they have some really, really good stuff, and so I did my homework, and here I am. So let me give some background on Moxy for people that don't know much about them. They formed in late 73 in Ontario, came out of a band called Lee Ashford that made an album, I think in 71. And that's what Buzz Shearman, I think I said that right, Buzz Shearman was in. Yep. And there's like a connection to Greg Godovitz and actually Gilmore. Yep. So, all right, I got that right. And, so they formed a band and I think their first gig, they were still called Lee Ashford. And, and then I think they changed their name to Moxy really quickly. So how they got popular was, they did their first album, I think in LA, and Tommy Bolin, of course, wound up, I think, being next door and doing his stuff. And he wound up doing like 6 solos on Moxy, the Black album they call. And, it got the attention of the guy, the DJ in San Antonio, Joe Anthony.
Yep.
And who, and he promoted a lot of bands, and it wound up when it got reissued worldwide in early 76, because it came out in 75. When it got reissued worldwide after getting some attention, he was playing like the whole album.
Yeah.
And so that created even more buzz. And I guess that, they were riding the wave, and they went into the studio, like, I think 3 months after it was reissued worldwide, to do Moxy 2. And so here we are at Moxy 2. They don't call it the Red Album, but, Logan has it in the background. So, hey, let's just put a 2 beside the name. And so
Oh, yeah.
not 2, not create. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be reading some notes, guys.
It
I'm
ain't much
sorry.
of an album cover, no.
Fine.
So, so after the buzz of that first one,
I do too,
you
man.
know, they said, let's get Jack Douglas in here to do Moxy 2. And I found out that he had just been in the studio with Aerosmith for 3 months for Rocks, you know, and he did Toys in the Attic too. But and so so he fresh off of that, and he comes to do Moxy, and they do it in Toronto at Soundstage. And you know, if you're familiar with Jack Douglas, Moxy 2 has a Jack Douglas sound. I mean, you know, that's the first thing I noticed once I realized that he did, you know, that he produced the album. And yeah, the drums, I mean, the mix, everything. You can tell this is Jack Douglas. He puts his stamp on everything. And you know, when I listen to Moxy, you know, I kind of get this, I don't know, this kind of fun hard rock vibe. You know, I feel like it's kind of like they're like a band you cruise around the neighborhood to and listen to, you know, looking for some action on the weekend. You know, it's like one of those kind of bands. And so Moxy 2 was in April of 76. They went in, I think they did the whole album in like 3 weeks, and probably released maybe in May or June. I couldn't find an exact release date. But you know, they probably didn't have the budget of, you know, Aerosmith Rocks, but I think it's pretty on par with the sound. I mean, not quite as, you know, a major league level sounding as, you know, Rocks and stuff like that. And he had done some other stuff too, obviously, Jack Douglas. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the track. So I'm going to, okay. So first one, Cause There's No Other. I mean, that one really, you know, instantly catchy groove. It just, I don't know, it's a kind of a feel good vibe. Like I said, cruising around, looking for mischief. I wrote, I don't know, it just has that vibe. Love the acoustic guitar that's kind of glides over the verse. I don't know, it just makes it kind of smooths it out. Hey, you know, the lyrics are typical rock and roll. I was really laughing when I first started listening to him, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I was more drawn, obviously, to the music and Bud Sherman's voice. I wasn't really listening to the lyrics, but when I went back and kind of listened, you know, he's like, hey, you know, you're out there, you ready to hook up? If you're not, there's another one right there. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, just straight on rock and roll lifestyle. I love Earl Johnson's guitar in this. I mean, I just love his sound. You know, it's melodic, crunchy, you know, what you'd expect and for, you know, a solid 70s hard rock band. And, you know, the fade out, you know, it kind of fades out. It's got some cool drum fills. I don't know if Pete, you know, can acknowledge that, but I love how it fades out. It kind of reminds me of the No More, No More fade out on Toys in the Attic for Aerosmith. Just kind of fading out, really cool guitar solo, drum fills, and it just, I don't know, it just, I think it's a perfect way to start the album.
Webb, I think you nailed it. I think to my ears, there are more elements sonically tied to Toys in the Attic, perhaps, than maybe Rocks. And I think No More is a perfect example. That's my first couple impressions listening through it. Rhythm section wise and the way that tonality comes out, it screams Toys in the Attic to me.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, so the guitar player, Earl Johnson, you know, I feel like he's kind of influenced maybe by Joe Perry, maybe like when Sydney said April Wine, that kind of like, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I just like his solo. I just love to hear his solos. They just flow, a little bit crunchy, soaring melodies. And so that's a hell of a way to start out an album. It's the first song I probably added to a playlist by them. I mean, I like the first album too, but this was the first one. So moving on to track 2, Take It or Leave It. You know, it's kind of funky. Kind of has, you know, I'm always trying to connect. Hey, this sounds like this. Kind of a Tommy Bolin-ish teaser sound on the second song. And the chorus, I don't know. I was hearing like a Dan Hartman of Edgar Winter Group kind of thing. I don't know. That's just me. You know, I'm always trying to connect things. very concise, short, radio friendly song. I think if you could, one of you can back me up with this, I think it charted in Canada. Take it or leave it. The second track on a radio. It said it tracked on a radio station. I don't, yeah. But it's a short song. It starts and then it ends. I mean, it's like, I think maybe 2 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that. So, and I noticed that every
get into
song.
the good stuff now. With.
Yeah. Anybody want to add anything about that song? I mean,
I'll get into it when I get. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll just keep going.
Go around. Yeah.
I'm on a roll. Third song, Through the Storm. That's a heavy riff. Again, kind of Aerosmith vibe to me, style of the riff. And let's talk about Buzz Sherman. Come on, this guy, growling, screeching. I mean, but I love his phrasing on every song and that I've heard by them. Kind of reminds me of the Nazareth singer with that growl and kind of, like sandpaper kind of sound. This one's kind of mid-tempo, kind of plods, but there's a riff at the end. I wrote down, there's a riff at the end of it. I don't think it's at the beginning of the song. Kind of reminiscent of She by Kiss. And then kind of a Skinner vibe. And then, the whole Southern kind of sound of Moxy might have been why that DJ in San Antonio, I don't know. And, just loved it and played it, because I know I was reading that they were kind of better they were doing better in the South than they were in the Northeast, even though they're from Canada. So that's what I wrote down. Okay. I'm going to go on to 4, One More Heartbreak. I think the drummer, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, hey, let's give a real simplistic kind of opening of Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin. It's not, go ahead.
I'd have to re-listen to it, to be honest, to associate the title with the audio at this stage. So I'll refrain from. I'll.
It's got a lot of open hi-hat things.
Yeah, and it's kind of pop, 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 but it's nothing as as cool as the beginning of Rock and Roll. It's kind of like he said, "Here's what I'm going to try something," and it just opens the song up. And I think it kind of this one has a Southern rock vocal style again. And I wrote down, that's kind of why I think that maybe Joe Anthony in San Antonio and, in Texas just latched onto it. I didn't really have much to say about that song, except that, it's a good song. It's a solid song. The next one, though, I think we got a little filler going on. It's instrumental, Slipping Out. It kind of fades in, and it's Rocky Mountain Way. I mean, if you listen to it, go back and listen. If you have it, it's the same groove, it's the same tempo, and guess what? It has a talk box guitar. So Rocky Mountain Way was 73, so maybe Jack Douglas was like, hey, we got to fill up this album. We need 4 more minutes. And they had this jam. Let's do a talk box guitar, but it is really kind of a rip of Rocky Mountain Way. It's cool though. It's cool. Twin guitars going in this one. I don't think there was the first 3 or 4 songs. I didn't hear twin guitars. So it's, I guess the rhythm guys, or they're doing double track, or the rhythm guy, rhythm guitarist, who I can't remember his name, is chiming in with him. And it's really all I had written about that one. I just kind of feel like it's a filler. But, it's cool. Slipping Out. Midnight Flight. Next song, Midnight Flight. I hear kind of like a Nugent riff, kind of another kind of Aerosmith sounding riff. Love the vocals on Midnight Flight. That was my probably second song that I really loved by Moxy. And another song about touring. Let's write about touring. Let's write about what we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 years or whatever. I'm sure these guys had done 100 shows or more by the time they did this album, probably 200, since they were tight, and you can hear it on the album. When I was making notes, it's just everything kind of gives me a little bit of an Aerosmith vibe on the guitars. And, it's just a fun song to listen to. It sounds like a driving around song, driving on the highway. ready for some action. I wrote that down a few times. I'm going to keep going, guys. The next one, Change My Life. So now we got a ballad. Let's do a ballad. Maybe, hey, we could write about something besides the rock and roll lifestyle, and, it works for me. Not that great, but it works. It's kind of the longer song because it's slow moving. It does have, again, cool guitar lines in it. I wrote down cool lead guitar line after the chorus. The song kind of feels long, I think, because more of the songs are up tempo and 3.5 minutes. This one's a little bit longer. I wanted to ask, there's an effect on the guitar. It goes into a little gallop right after like the second chorus. It kind of changes feel, and there's a cool effect on the guitar, and I don't know what it is. I'm a drummer. So yeah. So I'm always asking questions about that. I love the guitar. Ace Frehley was my first hero. So, I kind of feel like the band's being restrained a little bit on this. Like maybe Jack Douglas was like, okay, we need a slow kind of ballad. And I feel like they're ready to just like, let's break out of this. And they kind of do at the end. And it has a cool fade out solo again. And I love Earl Johnson's sound. It's just really easy to listen to, and the talent's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep going. Trying Just For You. I like the trying, not trying just for you. I feel like
Typical 70s misspelling things, or
of course. Well, no, you cut off the ending,
yeah, cut off the yeah.
Right. I feel like this one's a rewrite of Midnight Flight. Midnight Flight's got a cool sound to it and a good flow. And it's like, hey, maybe it's just kind of their sound at that time. That's just what comes natural when they're jamming and fleshing out songs. So I wrote Rewrite of Midnight Flight. Same kind of feel in the verses and the chorus, but it's a fun sounding song. Makes you, happy feel. I wrote Running Out of Ideas ? I don't know. Just because I feel like it's, maybe like Midnight Flight was really good. Let's kind of rework that. And, but it's cool. And then there's a cool breakdown solo at the end. And I felt like they should have stayed with that longer. I really do. I wish we could hear it, but I was like, damn, they should have stayed with that because that was really cool. And then, then the song's kind of over. So, but Buzz's vocals, what can you say about him? I think I've heard Gary Joyce talk about, in all our chats, and that he loves his voice. And that's kind of the main draw. That and just the solid sound of the band is the draw to Moxy, I think. And again, I wrote that it kind of has a Southern rock, not Leonard Skinner Southern rock, but just the way he sings and the way he phrases, it just kind of has it doesn't sound like Ontario, Canada. I don't know. So, all right, I'm getting near the end. I also wrote Phenomenal Yell by Buzz into the fade out solo. So he does one of his good screams. Oh yeah, it's Southern. Yeah, it's Southern Ontario. Okay, I saw that. Okay, so it brings us to the last song, Wetsuit. The band's showing their humor here. I don't know if you've listened to the lyrics. It's kind of a warning for fooling around and being a rock and roller too much. So if it's a personal experience, thanks, Jeff. If it's a personal experience, then Buzz got gonorrhea. This is what he's talking about. Okay, I just had to say it. The whole song's like a warning. Don't mess around too much. You might get something.
Which he was already married at that point, so it's an odd. Maybe I think it's just a joke. I don't think.
Oh yeah, it's tongue in cheek or whatever. Just like maybe they're saying, look, we're not a serious rock and roll. We can do something funny. I wrote that the riff and the verse groove are reminiscent of something, but I couldn't place it. It's definitely a blues progression. Longest song on the album, almost 5 minutes. I wrote, okay, so on the credits, it says there's a guy called the Wisconsin Kid, and he's for backing vocals on the song. And there's this refrain, love trouble, yeah, at the end of it. And I'm not going to attempt to sing it. Please don't ask me. But it's Love Trouble, yeah, and it says by the Wisconsin Kid. So I have no idea what that weird connection is. Maybe the Wisconsin Kid's a guy who had gonorrhea. I don't know. And okay, no more STD talks. But anyway, that brings us to the end of the album, and I don't think a lesson was learned by that song though, because it sounds like in the end he's going to keep messing around, because the doctor will give you pills and it's all cleared up. So I'm at the end of the album. I'm overall, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. There are, one or two filler songs, I guess, but this is their second album. They're still finding their way, I think. I mean, they have a sound. Moxy has a sound. I think that a lot of people like the next album. They got a little heavier on Riding High. And maybe that they're kind of, because when I was reading reviews, it said Moxy 2 sounds a little heavier than the first one. And then I know Riding High is even a little bit heavier. And I think that might have been the one that sold the most by them. And then I think that's when Buzz Shearman started having all the vocal problems, because he's belting it out all the time. And isn't that when Mike Reno, or whatever his long name was before he shortened it to Reno, came in for the fourth album? Somebody get me on that one. But I know Mike Reno came in.
Yeah, I think you're right, Will.
Okay.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so just overall, 8 out of 10. Solid 70s guitar rock. I mean, you can't go wrong with it if you like that kind of music, and I think most of us do in the SOT community. Give it a listen. Yeah, give it a listen. It's kind of sassy. It's fun, melodic, heavy at times, catchy, non-offensive lyrics. I don't know why I wrote that. Solid song. I mean, except for the last song, which is
it's just funny, right?
and but there's nothing special on this to cross over to the general public. So it's just good 70s hard rock. It's not the general public wasn't going to catch on, and they're going to sell. It's going to certify. So I don't know if any of their albums certified, but I don't know what the wetsuit has to do with anything either. But I'm reading your comment. But anyway, they're still finding their way. I feel like Moxy's still finding their way, and on an upward trajectory to their next album, and going in a heavier direction. And that's it. That's my analysis of Moxy 2.
Nice,
Excellent,
great, Webb.
Awesome.
I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, because there's another here, let's head over to Logan. Logan.
All right, man. Well,
you may speak
I
now.
was zooming out there. My computer likes to. If there's 4 of us on here, it likes to glitch a little bit. I don't know why, but yeah. All right, I'm ready to get into Moxy 2 then.
You're doing a Godzilla movie.
Do it, Logan. Do it, Logan. Come on.
Oh boy.
All right. Pretty much all my notes I think Webb took. So
I'm sorry about that.
It ain't no big deal. But yeah, I said the same thing, Jack Douglas production. I mentioned the Kiss FM DJ, Joe Anthony, pushed this band. And I mentioned the radio station, CHUM AM radio stations. A couple of them songs made the top 30. But we'll kick it off with Cause There's Another. This record kicks off with an energetic rock riff, which bleeds into some nice acoustic guitar work as Buzz leads the song into the verses. I love the chorus in the song. It's very hooky and catchy. It's got a cool lead guitar line after the chorus that appears a couple times in this tune. It's got a great lead break with some cool guitar lines and a bass groove holding it all together. And then the last part of the song has some great guitar leads. I agree with Webb. It's a great way to start this record. But then we get Take It or Leave It, which this one definitely sounds like they're going for a bit of a commercial edge here. Leaning in on a funk groove to start it out. The open to hi-hat groove complements the song very nicely, but overall, I think this is one of the weaker songs on here for me, but I do like the chorus. It's got a catchy chorus made for radio is what I wrote down, and a nice guitar solo. But then we get to Through the Storm, and that's pretty much the backbone of this album to me. What a difference between this song and the two that came right before it. I mean, Crack of Thunder, and we were off to the races in the song with an amazing guitar riff, and Buzz really shows how he is multifaceted and can expand his vocal range in this. I call it proto metal because I mean there really isn't much like this from the time. And I said it paves the way for future new wave of British heavy metal bands. And the vocals on here remind me of Dan McCafferty of Nazareth at times, which Webb brought up. But yeah, I love the chorus. Buzz singing about charging through the gates of hell. Like in 1976, that's pretty heavy for the time. It's got a great blues feel guitar solo from Earl, which I agree with everything Webb said. Earl is a fine guitar player. And we return to the riff from the start to lead us out with more epic guitar solo goodness. It's amazing for 1976 and definitely should be talked about more when it comes to origins of heavy metal, I think. And then we get to the third track, One More Heartbreak, which I said it's a boogie woogie track, more akin to Southern rock. I could definitely see why these guys were popular in Texas with songs like this, for sure. Love the way Buzz sings this track. And just the rocking feel makes this track very enjoyable all around for its short runtime. I think it's less than 2-3 minutes. So it's got a nice break in the middle of the song that lets the bass player and the drummer kind of show off a little bit for a couple seconds. And then we're back to the chorus, and that's the end of that one. And I kind of have a different. I like the instrumental track Slipping Out. I think it starts with an awesome Hendrix kind of Trower guitar riff at the start. And then we get some talk box from Earl, which is cool. And it goes into this melodic line that I've had in my head the last couple days. So, yeah, I also said I think they might have recorded the song during the same day as Through the Storm. And they were like, all right, Buzz, you can take a break for a little while. After he screamed his throat out pretty much on that track. I like this song. It breaks into a cool offbeat section too in the middle, with the talk box coming back in for some more soloing. I said I hear early Triumph in this tune, especially at the end. I think it ends side one in fine fashion. But then we get the side two, which is Midnight Flight, which is another Southern rock tinge song. With the opening riff, I said it reminds me of something like Nugent or Blackfoot, kind of. Buzz returns in fine form here, singing about life on the road. This track stays energetic throughout with some cool changes and different riffs being introduced about halfway through the song before the solo. It's a fun rock and roller, I said. Then we get the slower tempo ballad, Changing My Life, which I think Moxy excelled at on their debut. Like, I kind of call Fantasy a kind of a ballad, I guess. You know, it's kind of faster. Sail On, Sail Away is a little slower too. But it gets up tempo there. But it's probably my least favorite on this album, but there's definitely still a very cool, heavier riff in the chorus section. And I like the lead break in this song. Very emotional feel. And then I said there's like a funk part 3 minutes and 20 seconds in. It's kind of different. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't tell what it was. Then we get to Trying Just For You. Which I agree with what Webb said. It is kind of like second-rate Midnight Flight. But I like the vibe of it. It combines an upbeat feeling with the melodic side of Moxy a little bit. I think they probably could have pushed this one as a single if they wanted to. But the only bad part of this song is what Webb said, because at the end, they start like going off, man. The last minute and 30 seconds of the song is the best part of it. Yeah, what Peter was talking about with Just a Game, about turning it up, you know, till the very last second. That's what I feel about Trying Just For You. Yeah, that last minute just slays is what I said. Then we get to Wetsuit, which, you know, me and Sydney talked yesterday about this. That we're like a parody blues song. That's what I was looking for in my note. It's kind of like them making fun of certain tropes in blues music, and it's pretty good. But I think this riff at the start, it reminds me of kind of like James Gang style riff. Like that tone and everything sounds like a Joe Walsh song kind of or something to me. Then it goes into a slinky groove with Buzz singing very tongue-in-cheek Bon Scott style lyrics, is what I said. Bass is very prominent in the song too, which is very cool. Then we get a nice slide solo break, and then we go back into that groove. And I said, for a bunch of Canadians, these guys knew how to rock Southern style. You know, they were killer at it. Some great guitar soloing starts up again about 3 minutes into it, after the Love Trouble chorus from the Wisconsin Kid, I guess, whoever that is. Yeah, and the guitar lines soar out before we get back into another verse and chorus to cap off this very solid follow-up to a fantastic debut, is what I said. And overall, I don't think this album is as strong as the debut, but there's still plenty of great rock riffing and vocal arrangements to make any rock fan dig into this underlooked band, because they are very, very underrated, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Just great rock and roll, plain and simple. Just makes you wish they would have got their due a little more back then. I gave this record an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
So that's my spiel.
Sweet. All right. Nice to be given some love for Moxy. So yeah.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yep.
First of all, two great observations, and they're important because at this stage, all I've done is listen in a larger conceptual way. So when I'm discovering a new band and a new album, the first times I'm not analyzing the details of this, that, framing, structure, lyrics, whatever. I am just trying to get a vibe of how do the instruments hit me? How does a voice hit my ears? How does, the feel, what kind of stylistic approaches are they doing? Now that may be analyzation, but that's my circumference on the outside. And a lot of what you both are saying are reinforcing a lot of my first initial impressions. My first question would be this: do we know what the time frame was when Jack was recording the Stars debut?
Pete, I got it. That's great that you said that. He went straight from Moxy 2 to Stars.
Okay, so they must not have taken a very long time, because Stars was released in June.
I think it said that Moxy 2 was done all mixed
April.
and recorded in 3 weeks.
Yep.
Or it says April. So I'm thinking 3 to 4 weeks.
Here we have a producer who's done Rocks, Moxy 2, and the Stars debut in 6 months.
Yeah, busy.
One of the bands has become a household name. The other twos are in the if only they were more popular category. Yeah. And it's very interesting how that kind of happens. And there are a lot of similarities. Yeah. And I think, especially back in the day, producers had a bigger thumbprint on artists than perhaps they did later. You will never mistake the guitar tones from all three of those records as being classic Jack Douglas.
Right.
Because they are. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I believe that the Stars guitars are my favorite of the three. And Rocks is my favorite Aerosmith. It's a Desert Island record for me, and so is that Stars record. But it comes, so then what's the differentiation? Why the Aerosmith so huge? Why Moxy and Stars languished in the where are they now? They should have been bigger than they were category. And that's obviously a much longer conversation for another day. But I do think it's fascinating because there are similarities that tie all of them together that you wouldn't think would be such a far stretch if they know they exist. And that's maybe the bigger issue, that an Aerosmith fan would not have any trouble latching onto Moxy and or Stars, or a Stars fan would not have trouble latching onto Moxy, Aerosmith, and so it's a triangle. Each one would say, well, gosh, I may not have known the other two, but I like this one, and they're similar enough that I should be able to associate them and latch onto them. And somehow that isn't happening.
Yeah.
Pete, I think sorry to interrupt. Aerosmith, I don't know. They're just a notch up. It's kind of like I agree with everything you said. Aerosmith, I don't know. They had that it factor, I think. I mean, it was Steven Tyler, and the songs are a little more memorable. I mean, Moxy didn't write a song like Sweet Emotion. They didn't write a song like Walk This Way. I mean, it's kind of like their major league, and then Stars, although they're really good, and Moxy's really good. They're like AAA if you relate it to baseball, or they're good. Everybody playing in AAA baseball is a professional player, but they're not major league. I don't know. I don't know. That's what I thought about. I was thinking about the exact same thing you said.
Yeah. I mean, is the difference a Steven Tyler versus a Buzz and a Michael Lee Smith? Is that it? Or is it the fact that the songs, or the combination, or because we look at it lyrically, the Stars record is much more tawdry than the other two. It's not even close. It's borderline lewd, at times. And you say, well, okay, Jack is just being busy and he's just working. He doesn't know whether the band's going to take off or not, or what the deal is. He's just working, and obviously Aerosmith had a trajectory that they were already going through. Dream On was a hit. Get Your Wings and Toys in the Attic. Toys in the Attic had two monster singles on it.
Yeah.
So there is a difference there. And does it need to have that single? Is there that one song that's got to get people associated with it? And there's no answer for it today, but I do find it fascinating that we now have this, for me, a third record, because I've always associated the Stars debut with rocks, at least as far as my tastes, that I would just try and convince every single person I could find who likes Aerosmith rocks, going, you've got to hear the Stars record. It's amazing. Everything about it's amazing, to my opinion. And it was just like, it would maybe get close, or they'd be like, well, it's just something. And as I go back now and re-listen to Moxy, I'll have a whole different mindset when I go back through these and listen to some of the notes that you said, and listen to it and go, okay, is Buzz's voice connecting with me? He may be talented. He may sing properly. He's on pitch. Everything's great. But sometimes, and this was a problem with the Joe Perry project, the original singer, great singer, his tonality drove me nuts. So I couldn't listen to him. Right. And some people have a problem with Geddy Lee. Some people have a problem with King Diamond. Some people, you could say, the difference is that people are easier to listen to James Hetfield than Dave Mustaine. So, I mean, we can go on, infinitum. But, I just wanted to, I love King Diamond. But it's an acquired taste. And his voice and Udo, good example, could turn people off from that band reaching a certain level. And you say, well, maybe it's raspy, but then again, you blow that whole theory right out of the water, because Back in Black is nothing but a raspy
second highest selling album of all time.
It's nothing but a raspy singer. So that is a debunked theory already. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So, and that'll be something that I'll take with me when I go back and revisit this. So.
One quick thing I'll add is Jack Douglas also did Artful Dodger in '75, power pop band that it was Grant's Warehouse, Grant, and that's a band that I think should have been big too. And what kept them back? And it has the Jack Douglas sound. And, so it's just, there you go. It's just that age old question. Why do some bands make it big, and why do a lot of really good bands not make it big? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they were here. They were expected to become like their third album, Riding High. Like they were getting big, and then out of nowhere, Buzz announced he's leaving, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think that had to do with it. You
Well,
don't
he had
replace
something
that.
really wrong.
You don't replace that kind of singer.
Right.
It's like replacing Steven Tyler. You can't.
Right.
You can,
Mark.
but it's not going to be the same.
Mark in the comments, he's coming at me because I compared Aerosmith to the Stars. I said I liked both of them. I didn't say they were the same.
Agree.
Yeah, the sound's not the same, but like the production is there.
Yeah.
How they affect me is the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your experience may be different. Please consult your local.
Are we doing 2 hours almost, guys? We're almost at 2 hours.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah. Yeah. Because starts off with like, because there's another. I've got the vinyl, by the way. It's
Cool.
Oh, this was my dad's, but yeah, once I moved out of the house, he said, "Here, take all the records." So, yeah. So yeah, starts off with "Cause There's Another." Yeah, just great, fun rock song, upbeat. Pretty much everything you said. You pretty much said it all about that. "Take It or Leave It." Yeah, I'm gonna use the D word again, but I think it's more funk than disco. But yeah, it definitely has that sort of. Yeah, I was talking to my parents earlier, and they reminded me that it almost sounds like "Funk It Up" by The Sweet. It's sort of the same. I mean, that beat's been done 1,000 times, but with "Take It or Leave It," the song changes, where "Funk It Up" just kind of stays with that beat the entire time and doesn't change. I think "Take It or Leave It's" the better song, but it still does. It does start off with that really funky beat, but there's still really good guitar playing. And then we go to "Through the Storm." This is probably one of the heaviest songs of the 70s, easily. Buzz is just screaming the entire time. King Carpenter. Yeah, Logan. Oh boy.
I'll fist fight people on the playground to defend Karen Carpenter.
He's a good drummer, yes.
So be careful.
Yeah, "Through the Storm," he's just screaming. I'm glad Webb brought it up. I do hear I was thinking of that. I'm like, what is that it reminds me of? And it's She. You're right. It does. The whole feel of the song sounds like She, just heavier. And I think songs are only about a year apart.
Yep.
"Dress to Kill" was 75,
75.
a year apart. So like it's just really heavy song. He's like I said, he's just screaming. This is like 3 songs in a row. As Logan was telling me, he had to ask me. He was like, "Is this the same singer on these songs?" Because to me, it sounds like someone else. It just showed you the range that he had. And then you got "One More Heartbreak." That's total Southern rock vibe. And that was actually that was played on the radio apparently in Kiss FM in Texas along with "Midnight Flight." But that was a hit song in Texas on a Texas radio, which is not surprising. And then "Slipping Out." I never made that connection to the Rocky Mountain Way thing. But it does. And apparently, like, it doesn't even say. It says Buddy Kane guitar blow bag as an instrument.
I saw that.
The thing that Dan McCafferty used. So I think that was probably what was used. I don't know if it was actually a talk box. I think that's probably what was being used there. Was the blow bag thing that Dan McCafferty would use for Hair of the Dog. He would always bust that out live and start doing that. So I think that might be what you're hearing on "Slipping Out." But I think it's a great instrumental. The leads are just go nuts on it. Just a great heavy instrumental song. Just you could almost make up words to it the way it's played. You could almost like sing along to the melody of the solos, and it's just I don't know. I think it's a great instrumental. And then "Midnight Flight," another great straightforward Southern rockish song. That was a hit. And it was. But I don't know. This band should have been huge. I don't know. Like Buzz leaving probably had a lot to do with it. Just losing your singer just like that after 3 albums. And then Yeah, Changing My Life. Never too big on that song. It's just kind of just this soft kind of song, and just I don't know, it doesn't really go anywhere for me. I don't want to say boring, but like it sort of is. Sort of bores me a little bit. And then same with Trying Just For You. It's kind of like a mix of a ballad, but then kind of like starts just kind of like boogieing along. And then right at the end, like you said, turn up the full volume to hear the solo. But by then, the song's over.
Yep.
So those two songs I'm not too crazy about. And then, yeah, Wetsuit. That's just a funny, you just laugh hearing it. When you just listen to the music and then you go back and you're like, okay, let's see what he's singing here. It's like, did he just say that's just really funny? It's a really, really funny song. Yeah, I don't know what the Wetsuit title is about because he doesn't sing it at all in the song. I don't know what the title has to do with anything. Yeah, I would, as much as I don't like Changing My Life and Trying Just For You that much, I don't skip them. Like, I'll still sit and listen to them when I play this. Like, the rest of the material is just, I don't know, for me, it's so strong. I'd go 9.
Mm.
But yeah, I've seen them twice.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
I mean, it's just Earl Johnson that's left. He still puts on a great show. He's a phenomenal guitar player. I met him and everything, got a picture with him. He was very easygoing. But yeah, twice, 2 different singers each time. First singer was I don't know if you remember a band, A Foot in Cold Water. They had a big hit with Make Me Do Anything You Want that the band Helix later covered and had a hit with again.
Yeah.
And so he was singing with Moxy at the time. Had a good voice, but he didn't get like the raunchy vocals that Buzz could do. He's still a phenomenal singer and was, I guess, a good choice for like the more, I guess, mellow or whatever you want to call it stuff. And then the second singer that I saw them with was the singer from the Killer Dwarfs. So he was with them for a little bit.
I love that Killer Dwarfs album from like '83.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's another one. I don't know. I'm glad to hear somebody knows that one. I fell into that album. I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I met him too. He was very nice. Like I met all of the first time, yeah, and both times when I saw them, he had the drummer and bass player were from Zon. So he basically had like this lineup of like guys from like other Canadian bands, and yeah, it was kind of cool meeting them all, and they were all very easygoing, no egos, nothing. But like he's changed the lineup quite a bit, I guess, because it's Moxy's not a big name, right? Not everyone wants to go traveling to play in bars all the time, right? It's not for everybody, but yeah, they're just I find they're a great band, and even like the guy from Killer Dwarfs, I remember messaging him on like Facebook like before the show. I was like, hey, are you gonna be like doing like pictures with anybody or anything? He's like, oh yeah, sure. I always love meeting the fans or whatever. And I guess he somehow remembered my profile picture or something, because then I'm sitting there just like at the table in this small little club, and he points at me. He's like, oh, you're that guy from Facebook, aren't you? So the fact that he even, I was like, what? So it was like, this guy even, like, yeah, and he was so approachable. Yeah, it was really, and he did it well. It's not Buzz Sherman. I wish I would have been alive to see him back in the 70s, but that, unfortunately, had a motorcycle crash in '83, and he had some issues, and he was actually offered to replace Bon in AC/DC, but turned it down because I guess he was actually good friends with Bon, because when Roxy first started out, they did a show. It was Moxy was the headliner, AC/DC was opening the show, and the other opener was Rex, which was Michael Lee Smith from Stars' brothers band. So there's another, yeah. So that would have been a great show to see.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
it was. Yeah, they should have become huge. It would have been interesting to see if him and AC/DC singing those songs on Back in Black, how that would have went. Would have been different. He's not as screechy as Brian Johnson, but would have been interesting. Who knows? Maybe he'd still be alive. I don't know. It's history now. you don't know what would have happened. But
Yep.
and even like, yeah, I met his widow actually when she was always like attending the shows, Valerie Sherman, and she's very down to earth and just loved talking about her husband. And yeah, it was very approachable, just very, very nice people, her and Earl and everybody that was with them at the time. And yeah, it's a shame that it didn't work out because then they brought in Mike Reno, and he's got a good voice, but he doesn't have the
Yeah,
voice
he's not
that
much.
Mark had. Yeah,
All right, man.
yeah. So yeah, great album. I definitely would give it a 9. I have no problem giving it a 9. And yeah,
This was a great deep dive into 2 great Canadian bands for sure.
yep. Deep dive. So then yeah. So Logan, are you going to be good to go for the second show that we're doing for next week or next
State to
weekend?
state. Well, yeah, we'll see how it goes with work.
See how
I
it
mean,
goes.
yeah.
So if all goes well and Logan can get the Saturday off work, we're gonna at some point we are gonna be starting a series called State to State First Listens and Obscurities. So we're gonna be going from alphabetically from all the US states from A to Z and just well there's no Z, but yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, go all the way down to W and then go through all the we're gonna pick each episode's gonna be 2 states at a time. There'll be an episode where we're gonna do
Yeah,
California and the Carolinas together, but yeah, it's gonna be it'll be
I'm excited to get into that.
one show. I pretty much just went on just blogs and some other websites and just picked bands that I never even heard of and was just going through every state, kind of quickly looking at it on YouTube to see if it would be stuff that we'd even like. So yeah, it'll be fun to actually they're listening to all these albums, and I'll put that as a playlist as well, so people can check those out. Everyone go
Awesome.
check out Peter Jones's question to Gilmore,
Yep.
where he gets his name right.
Yeah, he does.
And you gotta say thanks to Webb for coming on and talking
Yep,
to us.
thanks for what to
Yeah,
Web.
yeah.
Great job.
Guys, I enjoyed it. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to talking about Thunder 7, right? In a
Yep.
couple
Yep.
weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a show under my belt now, so now I feel like I got some momentum.
Yep.
You did a great
Oh,
job,
great
man.
having you on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
That's a top 3 for me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Love it. Love
Great.
it.
Nice. Yeah, great guest today again. And thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Pete, thanks Webb and Logan. Always a pleasure to do this and have different guests every time. It just makes it more fun and interactive to have different people all the time. But if people want to come on more than once, they're more than welcome. And next week we'll be doing Progressions of Power and Nazareth afterwards. So yeah.
Cool.
My mom's not going to be coming on the show to discuss that. I don't think she's camera shy. I don't think she wants to come on and discuss that. She'll probably just be there in the comments. But yeah,
You don't have the budget for.
We don't have the budget. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching, and like and subscribe if you want. And thank you for watching and enjoy your day.
See you next week.
All right,
See you
guys.
next week.
Peace.
Peace.